Hello and welcome back to Scaled Down Customs. On the bench today, as you can see, is an assortment of paints, primer, and clear from Scale Finishes. Jameson was nice enough to send me over some paints and primers to try out, so that's what we're going to do today. So just to start off with, Scale Finishes, they are an automotive grade solvent-based paints. So if you're going to use those, you're going to want to prime your plastics first to make sure that your plastics are protected. Because these are, like I said, these are a solvent-based automotive grade sprayable paints, and these are airbrush ready right from the bottle. Sometimes I like to run my paints a little bit thinner, so he also has some reducer that you can put in your paints as well, just to reduce them down just a little bit more. So we're gonna pick out a couple of these colors. First of all, we're gonna use the primer, and then probably the Storm Sea Pearl, the aluminum. I want to do just a base coat, so I'll probably do the red, and then we'll try a couple of different clears. So this is a super gloss clear, and as you can see, it says gloss finish clear coat, and then he just has the 500 clear, which is just a regular clear. Now these are not 2K clears. He does have 2K clear for sale on his website if you would like to get those, but these are just regular clear, and I'm not sure what the difference is between these two. We'll try both of those and see. And also we have a matte clear coat as well. So now I have used Scale Finish before on a couple of my builds. If you saw the Porsche Jägermeister build that I did, that was Jägermeister orange paint provided by Jameson from Scale Finishes. He provided the paint for that build. And it sprayed out nice. So a couple of things. His paints, they can be sprayed on plastics, of course, but also metal, brass, aluminum. They pretty much go on anything you would want them to. He recommends spraying them between 20 and 30 psi. I find they dry pretty quickly, so I usually like to keep these down on the lower psi settings, or use a little bit of reducer to kind of help thin it out so it doesn't dry so quickly sometimes. And of course, with your plastics, you're going to want to clean your plastics first, just to make sure there's no contaminant like mold release agent if you get it out of the box, or if you've been handling a lot with your hands. That's why I usually wear a glove on my left hand, because I hold everything with my left hand, just to prevent getting oils and stuff on those plastic parts. So you're going to want to clean off your plastic parts just to make sure they're nice and ready for paint to stick to, and there's nothing interfering, there's no contaminant on your plastics. So make sure you clean those off with just some basic soap, glass cleaner, rubbing alcohol, whatever you like, just to make sure your parts are really, really nice and clean. All right, so like I said, I'm going to start out with the primer, and then we'll pick a couple of colors and see how those look, and then we'll try a couple of these clear coats just to see how everything finishes out. So let's go spray some paint. All right, so I got a few test spoons sprayed up. I tried a couple of different air pressures, some different distances, and almost all of them sprayed out quite nicely. This one was at 30 psi, and for most of them, I usually spray between 4 and 6 inches. So probably around the 5-inch range. That's usually where I like to spray. So most of these were sprayed from that range, unless I noted otherwise. 30 psi for that one. That's really smooth. That's really, really smooth. This one is also smooth. 18 psi, and this one was close, so this one would have been probably 3 or 4 inches away, and pretty heavy wet coats, and it still went on quite nicely. Also pretty smooth. This one also was an 18 psi, but at regular distance, so around 5 inches. And that one is also very smooth. 20 psi, regular distance. And for almost all these, I pretty well did, as you saw in the video, just a crosshatch pattern, a few passes, just hit it the one time and let it dry up. And these do dry up quick. All right, so that one was 20 psi, also really smooth. 18 psi, and this is a light, so just a light coating, not very much coming out of the airbrush, so kind of more of a dusting coat. There's a little tiny bit of texture on there, but that's still pretty smooth. So that also turned out pretty well. 18 psi on that. 30 psi at distance, so this was more like 8 inches away, so quite a bit farther. That one dusted up a little bit, especially on the edges. I'm starting to get a little bit of grainy buildup here. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see that actually. Anyway, so starting to get a little bit of dusting on that. Again, that's at 30 psi, and that's probably 8 inches away. So that's giving that paint a lot of time to dry before it makes contact with the item. 20 psi at distance, and this one's probably the most grainy. I would have thought the 30 psi would have been the most grainy, but maybe because the pressure is higher, it has a time to hit the item before it dries. But the 20 psi at distance, around 8 inches away, is probably the most grainy. So yeah, quite a few different options there. But most of the stuff I do around 20 psi, between probably around 5 inches away. So probably something like this, and that is just smooth, so smooth. Anyway, the brush I'm using is an Iwata Eclipse HPCS with a 0.35 mil needle, and that's been my workhorse airbrush for quite a number of years. So kind of a mid-range needle on that one. All right, so next step, like I would with any car, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to hit these. Get them really nice and smooth, just to make sure that the primer is nice and smooth, so we get an accurate reading of the paint on top. So I'm just going to go over these with a 600 grit sanding sponge from Tamiya. Just smooth them off real quick, and then we'll go spray some different colors of paints on these. All right, I got these sanded down, and they all came out very, very smooth. That primer sands out really nice. I did notice that the smoother the primer goes on, the smoother it sands out. Actually, this one was the 20 psi at distance, the most coarse, and it sands out smooth, but not quite as smooth as this one. So if I were to be painting a car, I would probably apply another primer coat and then sand that down as well. And I said I was going to do a 600 grit, but that's, I apologize for that. That's more my body prep grit. When I'm finished sanding, just to smooth everything off prior to paint, you want to use a higher grit. So this is a 1500, kind of like my finishing sanding sponge level. Anyway, so now we're ready for some paint, so let's go do that. All right, so I got all my colors sprayed. They sprayed on really nicely, nice and smooth. I did about 20 psi, 4 to 6 inches on all my on all the paints, just because that's kind of what I normally do. So I just kind of kept it consistent with what I normally spray, just to see how that sprayed out. Gloss black looks really glossy. That came out really nice, and I haven't done anything to these. I just put them in the dryer, let them dry up. The gloss was slightly tacky, but the rest of these were almost, I could run my finger across them, and they were, especially these colors with the red, the sea pearl, and the crystal red, they were pretty much dry to the touch before I put them in the dryer, but I went ahead and just dried them up anyway. With the two metallic colors, anytime you have a pearl or a metallic, you saw me kind of spray the colors, and then I kind of gave it a little bit of a mist coat. That's actually called a drop coat, and you want to kind of do that when you have a metallic or a pearl, and it'll kind of even out that, so you don't get striping in your metallics. So spray your color and then do kind of a mist coat over that, a light mist coat. You want to be careful though, because you don't want the paint to dry too much and then spray onto your part with texture. But anyway, so that's what you want to do when you're spraying your metallics. But yeah, those colors came out very, very nice. And then the Snowcrest white, a little bit of a gloss to that one. Also very nice colors, very nice coverage. The aluminum, so this one was still really tacky, but I sprayed that really heavy. The first light coat I did, it looked amazing. I really was impressed with how this aluminum sprayed out. Just a light coverage, and it looked amazing. I think I sanded most of the primer off because I added a little bit more, and then the paint started to blow off the spoon. So I kept spraying more, and so it looks a little dull right now. It still has that aluminum color, but just that light coat, and it looked amazing. And of course, that's where I touched it. Everything else was dry, but this one was still really, really wet. So probably because I sprayed it on pretty heavy. But yeah, everything's dry to the touch now. But yeah, these I really liked how these colors sprayed on. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add, like I talked about before, I want to spray the clear, the super matte, and the super gloss. So probably what I'm going to do, since this is already glossy, I'm probably going to add the matte to this one and a couple of other colors. I'll probably gloss up some of these metallic ones with the super gloss to see how that looks, and then I'll just probably clear some of these other ones and just see how that looks. So let's go do that real quick. Also, cleanup in between or after spraying with any of these can be done with any kind of a hardware store lacquer, just any kind of a lacquer thinner. Cleans this stuff right up really easily. Cleans out your airbrush, cleans up really nice with lacquer thinners. So anyway, let's go spray some gloss and see how these finish out. All right, so I let these dry off for a little while. I kind of put them on there pretty thick. The first couple of coats, or the first coat, I just did kind of a tack coat, and then after that I just kind of added on, and I just kind of kept adding it on pretty heavy. But anyway, so this was the gloss black that I sprayed the super matte over, and that is a really nice even matte finish on this. Again, that started out as gloss black, and then this was just the base red. But I like that matte. That's a nice even matte. So I like that. And then these are the clear. This was I think this was a gloss white. It did have some gloss to it already, but that gloss on there is pretty nice. And then this one, you can see a little bit of a haze on there. I really put this on super thick. It started to I could see it kind of blowing off with just the air from the airbrush as I was spraying it on. So this does have a little bit of a haze in it, but again, that's because I really laid it on there thick. But these are nice and strong. These are really durable. I'm liking that. Of course, you wouldn't put it on this thick, so you wouldn't get that haze. So like with this one, that's nice and smooth. And I was kind of just testing it a little bit. But that is a nice clear. And this is just the 500 clear. And then this is the super gloss for these two. And that blue, that metallic blue, that really made that pop. And again, that, for it not being a 2K clear, that's That's pretty good. I'm liking that a lot. And this was just that matte black base. It's got a little bit of dust in there, but I think I might just throw some polish on here just to see kind of how they polish out a little bit. So maybe I'll do that on some of these clears and we'll see how that finishes out. But straight off the airbrush, without doing anything, without wet sanding or polishing or any of that stuff, I am impressed. I like that clear a lot. So little tiny bit of orange peel, but again, I'm sure you could wet sand that down and polish that out, but because it's pretty durable. But I am liking that super gloss a lot so far. And the matte, that matte came out really nice, and that was like I said, that was a gloss black, so that's a really nice finish on that. So maybe I'll just kind of polish over these real quick just to see how that finishes out, and then we'll come back and finish this thing up. All right, so there we go. So I just ran a little bit of polish over mostly the top half, and for the matte, it kind of changed it from a matte finish to maybe a semi-gloss finish. So I guess you could polish out the matte finish if you want, if you need it a little more shiny. That's kind of nice. It'll polish out a little bit, give you a little bit more of an option with that. And then just the clear, you're not going to be able to see much of a difference on this one with using the polish on there, but it does polish a little bit, so that's good that you can still work with it after it's dried out. You can still polish those out a little bit if you want. And this one I had a little bit of a textured spot in there, so I hit it with some 3000 grit sandpaper and then polished that out. So yeah, you can wet sand it and polish it too, but this I would just be a little more careful about burn through, just because it's not a 2K. So I hit it with sandpaper, hit it with polish, and it seems to be performing just fine. So anyway, I'm really liking how these paints and clears are spraying out from the primer all the way up to the clear. So once again, I'd like to thank Jameson with Scale Finishes Paints for sending over some stuff for me to demo. I'm liking them a lot. So I'll put a link to his website down below in the description below. And again, it's just scalefinishes.com. Another neat thing that I like about Jameson's paints is he can actually mix custom paints for you if you want. If you're not finding anything on his website, he can basically custom mix any color that you would want. So I think that'll do it for this video. So once again, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.